You're not ungrateful. You're awake. This is the Dignity Room, a place that's always yours. Come in.
Somewhere in the last year or two, or maybe more, something started to feel different in your body, and not in one clear way you could point to and explain, in a scattered, confusing collection of ways. Maybe your sleep stopped being reliable, even on nights nothing was wrong. Or maybe you've cried at something small and then genuinely couldn't explain why. Or a word you use all the time simply wasn't there one day, like gone mid sentence in a meeting in front of people. And maybe you felt suddenly inexplicable hot in a room everyone else finds perfectly comfortable. So, yeah, and also maybe each time you reached for the same explanation. I'm just stressed. I'm not sleeping well. I'm getting older, I suppose. Here's what I want to say plainly right at the start, because I think you deserve plainness on this. What you are describing very likely has a name, and almost certainly nobody sat you down and explained it to you before it started, because this thing can start at 30. And that's not your failing, that's a genuine gap, one that's left a huge number of capable, intelligent women quietly wondering what's wrong with them when nothing is wrong with them at all. The word is perimenopause. The stage often spans several years that leads up to menopause itself, when hormone levels, particularly estrogen and progesterone, start shifting in ways that aren't smooth or predictable. They rise and fall unevenly, sometimes within the same week or sometimes within the same day. And I want to be honest with you about what this episode is and what it isn't. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to diagnose anything, and I'm not going to tell you what supplement to take or what treatment is right for you, because every woman is different and the symptoms are very different for every woman, and the variety of symptoms are also tremendous. So I will speak up about the most known ones, but there are much more. So you have to look close to yourself and what you are facing, and document that, because this would be very, very helpful when you document it. And yeah, to find out what works for you. I mean, supplementing, it's always a good thing, but what supplements you can or should take, this is, yeah, a different conversation. So of course, this conversation is like you should have with a doctor or a healer who actually knows your body and your history. And I would genuinely encourage you to have that conversation, of course, with someone you trust. Yeah. What I can do is something that surprisingly rare. Just name what's actually going on, or a sneak peek of it, because this episode would be too long to get very deep into it. But yeah, let's speak about it without the taboo and without the joke, so you can recognize yourself in it and stop assuming the problem is your character. because here's what tends to happen instead. Nobody talks about this clearly. It gets a punchline in a sitcom, or it gets whispered about, or it gets entirely skipped in every conversation about women's health you ever had growing up. So when it actually arrives in your actual body, you have no framework for it. You just have a pile of strange, disconnected symptoms, and the only explanation available to you is the one you've been using your whole adult life for everything. I must be doing something wrong. And you're not. Let's actually look at what's happening, or a few things of what can happening. I mean, it don't has to be the same for you, okay? But to give you like a little picture of what can. So let's walk through some of what you might noticing and why. So it's like sleep often goes first. So falling asleep, fine. Then waking at 3 or 4 and laying there wired for no clear reason. That's not a discipline problem, and it's not something a better bedtime routine alone will fix. Shifting hormone levels directly affects the symptoms that regulate sleep. So your body's signal isn't broke, it's responding to a real internal change. Then mood can feel less steady than it used to. So crying at something small, a flash of irritation that arrives faster and bigger than the situation seems to warrant, and then guilt right behind it. So this isn't you losing control of yourself. The same hormones shifting unevenly also interact with the chemistry that regulates mood. Your emotional weather is responding to a real internal storm, not a character flaw. Then we have memory. Memory and word finding can genuinely wobble. Walking into a room and forgetting why. For a woman who has always been sharp, who is relied on precisely because she's sharp, this one can be the most frightening of all, but it's well documented, or I mean, yeah, I will let it like this, but yeah, well documented is like, yeah, but it's let's say let's document it. Let's skip the well. It's documented. That's a part of this transition for a lot of women, and for most, it eases as hormones settle on the other side. It is not early dementia, and it's not a sign you are failing, you are falling apart. It's a known temporary fog with a known hormonal cause. And also, sometimes, not for all, but there's heat. So, out of nowhere, in a perfectly normal room that one almost everyone heard of, at least as a punchline. So, it's rarely treated as what it actually is, a real physiological event, your body's temperature regulation responding to hormonal shifts, and it deserves to be taken seriously rather than laughed about. So yeah, you can have that, but it's not that it is for every woman. So one woman have this and some women don't. So, and I am naming all of this not to diagnose you with anything, okay? But so you have a framework, okay? So the next time one of these shows up, okay, your first thought doesn't have to be what's wrong with me. It can be, oh, that's probably this. That single shift from self-blame to recognition is worth more than almost anything else I could tell you today. So here is also a thing why almost nobody talks about clearly. I think it's worth asking because the silence isn't accidental and it isn't harmless. A lot of it comes down to cultural that's deeply uncomfortable with women aging at all. Also, of course, the science is rarely discovering the woman's health, the woman's bodies. Some very things are discovered right now. I mean, we are in 2026, and yeah, so we are definitely not there yet, but it's moving. It's moving. And of course, when we look on the field, we have endless language for fertility, for use, for the years building towards motherhood. We have remarkable little honest mainstream language for the years after, for a transition every single woman who lives long enough will go through. It's treated as something to manage quietly, joke about awkwardly, or simply not mention rather than something to understand. So, and into that silence, you were left alone with a body doing something real and significant with no map. So it can be a little scary also. Here's what the silence actually cost you. Without a name for what's happening, every symptom gets misfilled. The sleeplessness becomes evidence you are bad at managing stress. The mood becomes evidence you being too much. The word finding becomes a private, terrifying fear about your mind. Each one alone becomes one more piece of evidence in the case you've quietly been building against yourself. The case that says something is wrong with you. But there were never separate pieces of evidence about your character. There were one connected physiological process, completely external to anything you did or failed to do. And there's something else. The silence cost you something quieter. It costs you the change to ask for help early, clearly, and without shame. Because women who understand what's happening to them tend to seek support sooner and stop privately wondering if they are somehow failing at aging. Women left in the dark often spend years white knuckling through something that has real, legitimate support available because nobody ever told them it had a name, let alone that it was worth naming out loud. So you weren't given a map. So you've been finding your own way through unfamiliar terrain in the dark, assuming every stumble was your fault. It wasn't. Okay? The terrain was always going to be unfamiliar. What was missing was the map, not your competence at walking it. So, okay, what you can do. The first thing, and honestly, possibly the most powerful thing at first, is simply what we have done today. Name it. The next time a symptom shows up, whatever the symptom is, try swapping what's wrong with me for this might be premenopause. So change your change your mindset, your thinking of, okay, I am the problem too. Okay, maybe premenopause is the problem. And that's a known real hormonal thing, not a personal failing. That single reframe, repeated, genuinely changes how heavy these years feel to carry. And it slows grows up. So it's not like on one day everything falls apart. It's like it comes one symptom after another. The second thing is, if you haven't yet, have an honest conversation with a doctor or a healer you trust. So not a quick, awkward 10-minute mention at the end of an unrelated appointment, but an actual conversation where you describe what you've been noticing and ask directly what your opinions are. This matters because the field has moved forward, a little bit in recent years, and a lot of women still believe the only choices are suffer through it, or one outdated option their mother was offered decades ago. So neither is true anymore. There are approaches worth discussing, and you deserve someone who takes the conversation seriously rather than waving it away as just getting older. This is not useful and you shouldn't do that. So seek conversation. I can't tell you what's right for your body because I'm not you. I'm not your body. My symptoms are different than your symptoms. And as I said at the beginning, I'm not a doctor, so yeah, I'm not really qualified to say what you should do or what you shouldn't. And frankly, nobody is without actually examining you and knowing your history. But I will tell you this, you are allowed to ask. You are allowed to ask more than once and to ask a different doctor or person if the first one dismisses you. You are allowed to take this seriously the same way you would take any other real physiological change in your body seriously. And you can do something about the symptoms to make them better, or maybe you can also make them disappear. But only when you talk about it and when you be aware of it, and also, of course, try what is working for you. And the third thing, it's maybe a little bit quieter, but maybe the most important, is talk about it anyway, with a friend, with your sister, with another woman in your life going through the same unnamed thing alone, the same way you've been. The silence around this has lasted as long as it has, partly because each woman has been facing it privately, assuming she's the only one struggling, when in reality, every woman near her is likely navigating some version of the exact same thing, just as quietly. You were never failing at this. You were navigating something real without a map in a culture that would rather you did it silently. So name it, take it seriously, and say it out loud to another woman, so neither of you has to carry it as a secret anymore. So I hope this episode helps you a little bit, and if there are three things that stay with you today, then one, what you've been experiencing very likely has a name, is perimenopause, and it's a known normal stage, not a personal failing. So like the sleeplessness or the mood shifts or the word finding or the heat or whatever it is, there's one connected physiological process, not separated pieces of evidence against your character. 2, the silence around this isn't harmless. Without a name for what's happening, every symptom gets misfiled as something wrong with you. That silence has cost generations of women the chance to ask for help early, clearly, and without shame. You weren't given a map. The terrain was always going to be unfamiliar. That was never your failing. And 3 things actually help. Naming it plainly when it shows up. Having a real persistent conversation with someone you trust, a doctor, a healer, whatever, about your actual options, because the field has moved, also when it has moved slightly, but it has moved, and you're already allowed to ask more than once, okay? Don't keep it only by once, and when you don't hear what is helping you, let it go. No, ask as many times as you have a solution what works for you. And say it out loud to another woman so it stops being a secret you are carrying alone.
That's all for today. If you want to go a little deeper, I left you something in the show notes. A quiet first step in your own time. Thank you for being here. This was the Dignity Room, a place that's always yours.